I think everyone can read me well. I'm Oksana Balayan, the managing partner of Hogan Lovells in Moscow. Happy to see you all, and we have already met at the cocktail party and the evening party, or rather night party, and the subject we're going to discuss today is venture capital and internet legal regulations, and we had a chance to see that internet is playing a bigger role in our life, and there were a lot of comments at Facebook right after the end of our party, in the aftermath of our party, and we are happy that the internet is helping our brand to develop. And I must say that life of lawyers without internet might be easier, and when we didn't have any internet or email, you will send a draft contract to the US by ship, and then you just mark time waiting when the response would be given to you. And right now it takes only minutes or hours to get a response, and life of lawyers in consultative business is a real fast, and it's a rush, and it is virtually in online mode. And the lawyers feel like that, and right now we have quite formidable speakers. We have representatives of the legal community and business community. Let me introduce the panelists. And while we were planning the round table, the idea behind it was to have the round table like father and son, because youngsters know more about internet, and we have to mix with youngsters, with youth, to understand what the future internet will be about. But for the time being, we'll decided to skip it, and that's why we have invited the experts, the specialists who are active at the market, to share experience and ideas, and to retake the ideas from the floor to start a discussion. What is the status of the regulations of internet at the moment? What are the challenges? What are the bottlenecks we should focus on, and how we should address these problems?
And I'm glad to welcome. First, right of me is Marina Zunic, who is the director on relationship with state authorities from Google. Marina is a very public figure. She can be seen at different websites. Her speeches, her presentations are published. I'm very glad that Marina is with us today. And like I said, Marina is not a lawyer. She graduated from the Faculty of International Information at MGIMO. She worked with BBC and Unilever, and today she's working in a company that is always related to the internet and its future, that is Google. And despite her young age, Marina is the winner of the Arista Prize in the category of the Best GR Director. We are very glad to welcome Marina here. Left of me is Mikhail Salantai. Again, despite his young age, he's a person with a great experience in developing venture capitalism in Russia. He is not a lawyer either. He is the person who was daring enough to leave Renaissance Capital and to turn from a classical banker into a person who invests into venture projects. That's a very successful fund, the Buran Ventures. Mikhail will tell us more about it. It's pleasant that in all times Mikhail always dealt with lawyers and legal documents and knows what they are. Further on, Vitaly Kalatin, the leading lawyer on IP at Rosnana company. I don't think I need to tell you about Rosnana. Rosnana is one of the leaders in investment in nanotechnologies, and there is an element of venture capitalism here, although this is not a fund like in Mikhail's case. Vitaly is specific in that he looked at different legal issues from the standpoint of a consultant and Freshwells, and from the standpoint of a head of the legal department of Rosnana, and we are very glad that he will share his ideas about the IP issues. Given Vitaly directly participated the civil code part relating to the IP. And I would like also to represent our American expert. He's Dan Tangeman. He's in Russian, I will say it in Russian so that it is clear. He's Cross-Border Trade and Geo-Expansion Council at eBay. He graduated from Harvard. He worked in the legal business and in consulting business, and he will share his ideas on regulating IT industries from the standpoint of the well-developed American economy. We're very glad to welcome each and every one of you, and I've built our work in such a way that each of the presenters will make a small presentation. Each speaker will make a small presentation for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then you will have an opportunity to ask 2 or 3 questions, and at the end, we'll still have about 30 minutes for general questions and discussions. So don't be shy. We want to have this session interactive. And Mikhail, I'm passing the floor to you. And I hope that all the IT equipment is working. Thank you very much, Oksana. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I would like to tell the audience about the venture market here in Russia and about what challenges exist in the legal field inside this business. What do I have to press? May I ask the presentation? Yes, some people are doing that already. Well, while we're expecting the presentation, I'll start with the, here's the first slide. Well, unfortunately, there's a very limited number of transactions in Russia. In 2011, 2012, there were only 200 deals in Russia in this area. Think of that. Only 200 young companies got funding from the professional market in order to develop their activities. The amount of that funding was $750 million in either year. But as this slide shows, most of that money, this lion's share of that money, was invested into the companies where people invested over $10 million. So people invested not in startups, they invested in growing businesses, and there's quite a lot of deals from 3 to $10 million. So that's not a start-up business again. So these deals, these investments of $3 to $10 million occupy 5% of all the investment that is invested in Russia. That's a big problem. And a question may arise. What is the problem? Why are there so few transactions, and why are there so few transactions which would support the startup and the young companies? In our opinion, the main problem is that the number of transactions and investments is small, not only due to an absence of capital, but because of the present absence of projects. And the projects depend on the entrepreneurs, the people who undertake a great deal of risk and who invest their energy, their ideas, their time into new projects. Unfortunately, there aren't too many successful entrepreneurs in Russia, and the serial entrepreneurs, which are the backbone of that industry in America and Europe, are very, very few in Russia. And that's one of the problems. The venture investors have to deal with people, mostly with people who start their business for the first time. And from the standpoint of risks, the risks seem to be very high, and it very rarely happens that the company and the industry is interesting and that you see an entrepreneur has proven himself in this world, or the entrepreneur who makes such an impression on you that you may trust him with your money. One of the main problems, in our opinion, in the Russian venture industry is that it's a very young industry. If you compare Russia with the US, there's a huge number of funds in the US who have already invested their funds, they've invested money, they have returned the money to the investors, but the sellout of the company, and they attracted other funds, more funding and more funding. In Russia, there's only one fund called DST, who managed to turn the money around several times, and that's a big problem. But all the other participants in the market are very young and unexperienced managers, and that can only change with time. So the venture market will be developing in medium cycles. The investment cycle will be 3 to 5 to 7 years, the time needed to collect the money, to invest the money, and to return the money to the investors. And this will gradually result in a market which has investors and entrepreneurs who have proven their serious nature, and they've proven themselves. Next slide, please. I can't do that. Maybe some will help us change the slide. Well, we apologize for the faulty technology here. Yes, once again. No, that's wrong. Next page won't come up. Mikhail, I believe you do it well without the presentation. You're doing it quite well. Well, the next page showed the investments in different sectors of economy, investments of up to $3 million and over $3 million. Small transactions mostly happen in e-commerce, in the services. And that's understandable, because if you need a different scale of investment, if you want to have a successful e-commerce in commodities. Mobile applications in the second one. Software as a service is the third one. Well, in fact, that is software and applications that are available for clients through the internet. Media sector and social networks remain a target of investment. Also, it seemed that the social networks were popular some time ago. Still, the niche social networks continue to attract capital quite successfully. Of the major transactions, the lion's share of capital goes into e-commerce related to commodities. 75% of all the capital that is invested goes into that sphere. And also, thank you very much, quite a large share is occupied by strangers. It may be travel industry in major and the software. Let's go on. Okay, actually e-commerce in Russia, as we saw in the previous slide, is one of the key directions of investment over the last several years. So what's happening to this market? Certainly, this market constitutes about 2% of the overall Russian market, which cannot be compared to the developed Western countries. In the US, the share of e-commerce is over 10%. In the UK, in Germany, 6 to 8%. And the experts expect that there will be a significant growth of this market, that this growth will increase from $16 billion today to $64 billion within the next 5 years. So it's a huge growth potential. That means that the leaders of the market that we know today may easily be replaced. These are companies with a turnover of $150 million, and that's laudable compared to the leaders of e-commerce in the well-established markets. So we believe that there is still opportunity for new players in the e-commerce in Russia, and there is a possibility to take over those companies that traditionally do e-commerce. What is the main problem with e-commerce in Russia? It is shown in the bottom right part of my slide, which demonstrates the economy of any electronic store. Those are average numbers for the market. If the turnover is 10,000 rubles, the margin or the commission is 25%. So they earn 2,500 rubles from selling the goods. While, and that's the most interesting part of the Russian market, and that's how the Russian market is different from the Western markets. In order to sell the goods, you will have to spend 2,000 rubles on marketing to the client, and that's 500 rubles. So if a store sells to a new client, they incur a loss. So in order for the e-commerce to be viable, you need a lot of clients coming back, because it is only when your client comes back, at least for the first time, only that brings you profit. How can we bypass this problem? And what's the reason for this problem? The reason is shown in the bottom left corner. The cost of internet marketing in Russia, from the standpoint of their efficiency, are below television marketing by a factor of 3. All over the world, the internet seems to be a modern technology, and it should do marketing more efficiently, but that is not so in Russia. That's why the electronic commerce finds it more difficult to develop in Russia than in other countries, because in order to start a successful e-business in Russia, you must create a brand. You must come to a point where people start buying from you without you spending a lot of money on marketing. A lot of people think about how to bypass this problem by looking for the so-called B2B or B2C models, looking for partners who will help them with this out of the internet marketing, and only keep their sales activities on the internet. The another problem is that Russia is a very big country, and the logistics that is needed to cover all the country demands a lot of investment. So if you developed e-commerce, that means you need big warehouses, you need a lot of working capital. In Russia, as compared to Russia, the cost of capital, both the loan capital and own capital, is much higher than in the West. And because of these problems, electronic commerce up to now was developing somewhat slower than in the developed economies, but we're certain that the situation will change very fast, and it is very difficult to say when, but within the next 5 years, this market will undergo radical changes. Because of the two factors. First of all, because of improvement of logistical situation and the reduction of the cost of capital, and thirdly, because there will be businesses who will get a way out of this marketing trap. Going on, in the US and in Russia, it is fashionable to talk about the ecosystem of the venture world and the ecosystem that surrounds the startups. How can you compare the Russian ecosystem with the developed market of America? In the US, there's about 1,000 institutional investors, that is professional managers who look for companies, look for startups and invest in them. There are only 30 such teams in Russia. Of those, 10 to 15 are truly Russian and focus on the Russian market, and there are 10 Western funds who actively participate in the Russian market. As a result, we have 200 transactions a year, whereas in the US it's about 3,500 to 4,000 transactions a year. Another problem is that Russia only has 100 business incubators, whereas in the US the number of institutions that render assistance to young entrepreneurs, who educate them, who provide them initial start, is greater by an order of magnitude. For the successful venture market to exist, venture capitalists, such as Buran Venture Capitals, must have an opportunity to attract or to raise money, because we do not usually invest our own money. First we raise money and then we reinvest the money. In the US, the investment into the end companies was $25.5 billion, but the money raised was 21. In Russia, the final investment was 750 million, but the 20 funds in the Russian market only raised $200 million, and the difference between 750 and the 200 was covered by foreign funds that invest in Russia and by a lot of oligarchic structures who are interested in the internet market and are trying to actively invest into it.
So this problem to attract more money for professional managers is one of the last problems of Russia. And at my last slide, I would like to tackle upon legal issues. Unfortunately, the majority of venture funds, including Western funds, are still prefer to work in foreign jurisdictions. In particular, they prefer British law. Why does it happen like that? First of all, General Director in Russia has a lot of executive powers that exceed by far the competence and the powers which are traditionally for Western jurisdictions. And it's extremely difficult to limit these powers of the general directors and to protect the rights of minorities. Because a venture businessman is a minority shareholder, but he still wants to have his rights protected, which is rather difficult to do in Russia. And in addition, if, for example, you manage to structure your deal in Russia and to define mechanisms for the protection of minority shareholders, the perspective to defend your position in Russian courts doesn't look very attractive. Venture transactions has a set of tools, for example, investments into preferential shares, protection in case of winding up of the company, meaning that the remaining funds should be provided to defend the investor interests, and these mechanisms are not yet available in Russian legislation, and that's why the investor is actually forced to work in foreign jurisdictions. Here we try to present a diagram. For example, a fund invests into offshore company who next invests into Cyprus holding companies where Russian founders are also members, and next this company is the owner of the Russian limited liability company who actually runs the business. Usually the intellectual property such as domain or the rights on the content people are trying to incorporate into the holding company to protect them against risks of Russian jurisdiction. And finally, the last topic to be mentioned. It's the culture of corporate governance in Russia is nearly non-existent. So it's not just a question of minority shareholders' rights or interaction between majority and minority shareholders, but there is no business culture. People don't understand that the board of directors and other collective management bodies are necessary. If your investments are 50 or 100 million dollars, it's quite normal to register everything in English jurisdiction. But if your investments are lower, the overheads seem to be too high. They don't seem to be necessary, and that's why this approach, this lack of culture is hindering the development of e-business in Russia. We do hope that the corporate culture and attitude to the corporate governance in Russia will change, and one of the investments of Buran Venture Capital was made into Westcaps, who is developing the optimized solution for the management boards in Russian companies, and the final aim, the final objective is to incorporate Western standards of corporate governance in Russia. Any questions? Thank you, Misha. You made a very concise presentation. I think we now understand pretty well what is the venture capital and what are the problems and issues for the venture capital in Russia. When I was getting ready to our panel discussion, I read your interviews in the net. You mentioned that Buran is like a casino, and you just have to bet 1 million. I wonder what is the denomination, what is the currency of this 1 million, and how do you select the objects for investments? I think that venture business must be opposite to casino. We developed a speed-up startup model which we apply to all businesses, and our goal is to maximize the possibility of success, which is to select from the majority of startups that we know and we see those who are most promising. And I hope that the future of the Russian market depends on the managers who will prove that their scoring models, their investment strategies are correct, are appropriate, that the invested funds will be returned. And as soon as we live through a number of business cycles, the future of this business will change. Please introduce yourself. Mikhail, thank you very much for your speech. My name is Denis Rычkov, Hotel Legal. You showed us a diagram showing the structure of your operations from the investor up to the final, the end user. Your experience, you're actually unique. Until recently, a standard structure for the legal execution of the transaction to get funds from the investor by the end user, by the startupper, was to open a joint company and some legal documents allowing to leave this business. Recently, our legislator allowed new types of cooperation. And today, there is a number of projects when investor is not a part of the business. It just provides funds and enters into a kind of gentleman's agreement. And we're speaking about significant amounts of money. And some European and Western funds allocate sufficient money for these gentlemen's agreements. I want to know your attitude to new types of this cooperation, of this legal execution of relations. Well, we traditionally invest according to the diagram that you have shown. We first of all invest into a Cyprus holding company, and this Cyprus holding company transfers funds to its 100% daughter company or invests into the equity capital. What's our attitude to new types of joint property? We welcome alterations in this law, but right now we are not yet ready to apply them because these new formats are not well tested, and it's not yet clear how they will be applied in real life. We understand pretty well the traditional scheme. We understand where to claim and how to defend our rights. According to new forms, it's not yet clear how they will be implemented in reality. So we are planning to monitor very closely the new practical developments, and if they prove successful, we shall adopt them. And answering your question about gentlemen's agreements, we heard about them, but it's not our cup of tea. We don't believe that they are good for Russia. I think that there are different understanding how to invest money, how to document these investments. So I think that this type of gentleman's agreement may be quite unsuccessful for both parties. Thank you very much for your questions. To make our work efficient, I will give the floor to Vitaly, who will describe the attitude to intellectual property rights in Russian legislation. Thank you, dear colleagues. During the last 20 years, the society tried to confirm to us that intellectual property is a valuable asset and it's worth being protected. Yeah, but it's true that intellectual property can be useful. So to be able to merge these two concepts, we need legislation and legal practice. We have the legislation, but the legal practice is quite ambiguous, and I would rather speak about legislation, about its history, current status, and the possible future. And intellectual property, the definition of intellectual property, transactions with intellectual property, and protection of rights. We have all common questions to the internet. So, such as the identification of jurisdiction, authentication and identification of the party to the transaction, definition of competence and the scope of activities, scales, difficulties to prevent violations. And all these questions must be answered by our legislation, and I'm speaking not only about national legislation but about international legislation as well. And we should keep all these topics in mind. That's the regulation of the intellectual property right now. We have civil code and a broad definition that allows to define any property. So that's good. There is a special definition for the copyright. There are special norms for the means of individualization, which says that intellectual property in the net has absolutely the same rights and scope of application like anywhere else. There are some problems with the application of the exclusive right. If the draft of alterations that we have developed will be adopted, which we don't expect to happen in the near future, what alterations are suggested by us? Some of them are minor and negligible. Some of them are quite important and significant. What's more important, we are speaking about the limitations of the exclusive right, which is stipulated in our civil code. All the limitations that now refer to the application of the exclusive right, they don't refer to the internet and the use of intellectual property rights in the internet. And the complex discussions that did take place showed to us where we were right or wrong. And today we have due limitations for mass media rights in the internet. Well, I hope that our legislators will not stop here. What we have still to define and to include into our legislation. These are special objects for the information resources, e-libraries as a specific object. Today, the legislation allows only the digitalization of printed text for the use by library readers. We don't have patenting of information processing methods of business conduct, etc. Nothing. We are not speaking about the transfer or adaptation of British or European legislation, but we have to provide something for Russian legislation. And finally, international agreements, which we cannot do without. In the long run, we will need to have and to sign international agreements. We understand that some conventions, like Berlin Convention or Berne Conventions, are obsolete, but conventions are necessary. They allow to establish the common rules of the game. Transactions. We have general provisions about transactions. They are fully applicable to internet transactions. What we suggest? We suggest to allow deals say, without compensation, such as gifts and donations, and in some cases, particularly for internet applications, these are absolutely necessary. For simplified agreements, and these agreements apply to the majority of software which are placed in the net, we particularly insist on the non-refundable transactions. Next topic are licenses. These are licenses for the content or for the presentation of the content. When we speak about some works which are made and replaced in the internet in a digital format, not all provisions that are applicable to traditional printed text are applicable to these works. We also clarify that the license agreement also must include Article 1286, which says that the right to use of the work can be provided by the purchase and sale of one copy without any license agreement. So this article is now setting the borderline between license agreements and the transfer of right. We also discussed quite for a long time the serious delineation of rights on the reviews, because we saw a number of conflicts and contradictional provisions to the Russian legislation. I will not discuss what was reviewed, but what proposed is a unilateral deal, not licensed transactions, but just unilateral deal allowing to use or to replicate a specific product. And secondly, it's a full scope agreement. We will be the first country in the world who has adopted its legislation to free licenses.
Another important limitation in property rights is the opportunity to state changes from the very beginning in your literary compositions, because you cannot do this from the outset. And then there are exclusions, like until it's published in the internet, you cannot take it back. What will happen next in 5 years? Well, first, electronic form of transactions. It exists in some countries like Germany. Then special norms accompanying this, like consumer protection norms, advertising norms. In special cases, international agreements are also needed here. But this should be discussed separately, because internet may become too transparent when you can see everything that's done there, when it's all accessible to all the state, your competitors, but that's a different issue. And number 3 is distribution of responsibility. 2 base cases that show how judicial practice is changing. And this shows you the approach of our courts based on international practice without understanding the essence. They adopted the criteria to a different case and adapted to Russian practice. As a result, everything's confused. And courts here had to take a different ruling. And the Agava is a contradictory case in this respect, where the internet provider's rights were restricted. So court practice develops different ways, both unsatisfactory, but it's positive in terms of the trend. Now, what does the project propose to do? Number 1, what we have is the norm about internet service providers, exclude the responsibility of those transmitting information in the internet, and restrict the liability of those who provide hosting services, those who are aware of the breaches or were informed of it. But most importantly, the hosting provider must not be passive waiting for claims, but take measures to prevent the breaches. That is, they got to be proactive, but the law doesn't state what exactly they're supposed to do. Like in this case that we have in front of us, that was impossible to settle. So this says necessary and sufficient measures based on existing practice. And then the law on the internet has got to be adopted. And finally, what's shown here, liability of the user is a common trend. And we as end users are liable for our actions. We can't stay outside the process. Maybe in Russia we will have something similar, but this requires a complicated decision. So one way or another, we have to get closer to this law about internet ISPs, and these norms will provide the basis for judicial practice, for court rulings, without which title owners' rights will hardly be protected. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions, I'm ready to take them. Thank you, Vitaly. While the audience is getting ready to ask questions, let me ask. While we don't have advanced technologies, people are discussing things about oil pipelines, real property, and things like that. Internet science, what is it all about? What kind of object is it? Can you materialize it in into something useful? Yeah, that's one of the issues we tried to address in the draft, but came under criticism by our opponents. Now, internet is a collection of materials, pictures, texts, documents, etc. Of course, there may be exclusive rights to some of those materials, but not title to the entire resource. Now, court practice followed a broader path, and they're saying that the website is not just an image or video fragment, but it's also a compilation. It's something holistic, something that you can take, protect, pledge, transfer, protect against change in value, and then what we got to do next. Eventually, we have to define its regime as a separate subject. If you have a website, you can claim that it's a database, and the existing law enables you to do that. But you have to prove it, because the law does not state it specifically. So you can claim title to your database. So if we have a website as a separate subject of law, then it can be disposed of, like it can be sold. I'm selling a website as such, without specifying the materials included in it. Like you can sell the rights or the title to a movie without listing all the actors, directors, and everyone else involved. While for the time being, a website is a collection of materials. So when you're transferring it, you're transferring a collection. You have to list all the materials included in it. That's what the legislation enables you to do. Thank you. That's good. Any questions to Vitaly from the floor? Okay, please introduce yourself. Now, good afternoon. I'm a graduate student of the Moscow State University. Now, closer to our roundtable topic about intellectual property and the internet. The previous speaker told us about the issues existing for venture capitalists. So what do we have to do to improve an intellectual property, which is now an asset in venture deals? What issues exist? What should we improve in the legislation? Well, I was precisely talking about legislation, so I won't repeat myself. But in terms of the business, what needs to be changed for the business? Even if we don't look at the internet, but just take the intellectual property. What we face all the time in Rosnano, there's many developers of technologies who don't pay sufficient attention to technology, so to the protection, and more often than not, technologies are not protected. And when you get a patent, your protection has got to be comprehensive. If you're talking about internet projects, then you have to be ready to protect your rights in every country of the world. So you got to obtain patents in every country of the world, or be a lawyer, have a middleman who will help you do it. And a third issue is about evaluating intellectual property. How do you evaluate? We have a few appraisers now. However, the experience is very limited. There's just a few companies that can evaluate intellectual property. Most don't even understand how to do it, or can do anything, can provide you a price that the client wants. We had a case when a notification was estimated at a certain value. So if you're interested, we've developed this method for the appraisal of intellectual property. We've published it. You can find it on our website. But this is also a problem, and without appraising it, you will not be able to understand how important intellectual property is. This is one of the key problems that business faces now in practice, because when business will grow over and even beyond its present inception stage, then of course, then issues will arise about managing your intellectual property. But for the time being, we're still in this childhood state. Thank you, Vitaly. Let's move on to more complicated topics. Marina will tell us about digital platforms. So please pay attention, because venture capital and internet, we're slightly moving away from this, but this is going to be interesting. And please prepare your questions beforehand. As a lawyer, I will discuss the advantages of internet and the new trends and market niches emerging thanks to internet, which make internet more and more attractive as an investment. And it's developing faster than the content. Okay, now the slide will take the right shape. No, not yet. Wait a sec more. There's a beautiful beginning there. Let's not miss it. I don't want to miss it. Where am I supposed to press? Oh, right. There you go. Okay, you know that. You know this. There. Some 3 years ago or 5 years ago, or sometimes even now, many people thought internet was an evil, and content producers mostly came from the movie industry. So people argued whether to destroy the internet or not. But we argue that users should be reoriented towards legal content, and I will tell you about how to do it. There's lots of examples of redirect from illegal to legal content, both paid ways. There's quite a few models, like pay for by track, by album, subscription payments. I pay some 100 rubles a month for a subscription, and I get a certain number of books to read. Then there's an advertising model used by YouTube, and I'll talk mostly about that. What proof do we have that the users are willing to pay for content? And this is part of copyright, particularly for music and video. Well, in Sweden they have a comprehensive model, both subscription fee and payment as you go. And they started in 2009, and very quickly the users reoriented because the model turned out to be convenient, easy to use, and inexpensive. Of course, the key role is played here by the price of the tracks, the price of the product offered here. Now I will surprise you with quite a few numbers. We use studies, and recently, I think about a month ago, we took this study, The Sky is Rising. We presented it. We undertook it in a number of countries, including Russia. It's accessible. You can see it in the internet. There's not much data about Russia there, but this is because researchers tried to calculate only open data, something accessible based on financial statements, which is not always a Russian reality. Now look what we got. This may not match the presentation. I will continue speaking, and you can just follow the screen, which may not go at the same pace as myself. So there's many studies in Russia saying that users demand content. In 2009, a quarter of Russians were ready to pay for legal content, provided it's accessible, good quality, and affordable. Now, 3/4 are not ready then, one may say, but I can tell you that that's room for improvement. And investors and venture capitalists can do that, and I'll tell you how. Now, electronic books, 70% of Russians read e-books, and more than 15% of those questioned by illegal content. Of course, you can say that the glass is either half empty or half full, but the trend is there, it's positive, and we got to use it. The digital consumption market is growing as well. There's the number on the screen. This industry report used by our musical industry as well. Online music sales grow, and over 2012 sales grew by 14% in Europe, and then 25% compared against last year. Now, that's another interesting number. I can tell you that, well, textually, this is, of course, amazing. And at the same time, consumption grows as well. Well, among other things, it's due to the revenues generated for the copyright owners. Now, these are the drivers. Greater number of internet users. You can see the number of internet users in Russia compared against world numbers. Google Russia, for instance, or Russia for Google, is the fastest growing market in Europe. And currently, as part of global Google, Russia is in the center of attention because not all niches are covered. In the context of our discussion, this is due to new models, easier internet access, growth of smartphone usage, tablet computers, and things like that. And this trend will continue into the future because this is about a new civilization paradigm. What we're observing now is like Eric Schmidt, CEO, said, this is like the war that used to take place between cell phones and pagers. Now, look at the factors we're facing here. The UN recently, some 6 or 12 months ago, recognized the internet a fundamental human right. So the internet is a fundamental human right. You may not have realized that our kids learn faster to use internet rather than tie their laces. And this may scare you, but say iPads influence will damage eyesight, children's eyesight, but kids do their homework on the iPad. Crazy, isn't it? Recently in England, there was this research among teenagers, people between the age of 20 and 40, and people said that they would rather lose their sense of odor rather than a cell phone.
We mean the one of the communication means and not the ability to ring. That's what we face. We have to face it, and in the context of our discussion, we should ponder over how we use it. Let me give you some facts and figures. First, on YouTube. That's what we received last month. 1 billion people use it globally. And 72 hours of video is uploaded to YouTube you can just guess how many films it makes, and a great number of hours are viewed now by spectators than a week ago. Is it okay to press escape for us to move forward? And full screen, please. Okay. YouTube in Russia. You can see the growth figures. It is a reference to the video industry versus the other countries. And the YouTube users are 50 million people. It is 90% of all the users. It is between 60 and 65 million people. And it is the figures are big, and that makes it that permit us to work with our partners and cooperate with our partners. Right now, there are more than 1 million labels in the world. These are film studios and TV channels, sports channels, bloggers, and individual performers. And if we take large labels only, then such labels as Paramount, 20th Century Fox uploaded thousands of new films to YouTube, and you can see the track record of how much time has been reduced to get a subscription by the popular channels. It is more stable than the number of the clicks, and the 15 months were needed to get to the threshold of 100,000 subscribers, and it takes only 1 month to get to the 100,000 subscribers. In Russia, the statistic is as follows. We have more than 2,000 partners at the moment, and we count these as channels and individual authors. And 3 major channels, Russia Today, Luntik, and the other one, get 1 billion of visions every day, and so many channels generate profits, and these figures are converted into real money. And what is the possibility? How the statistics converted into money? The most unusual example is what is demonstrated by this YouTube video. Charlie has bitten me again. You have to see it. So Charlie has bitten the brother again, and everything could be all right, but the parents, everything is fine, but the parents who have uploaded it, it could be just all right, but the parents have earned £100,000 per month. Sorry, not month. It is a total figure, £100,000 by January. And sure, you know this particular character. It is Psy, a South Korean performer who became famous because of the YouTube. He has been performing things, but with that particular performance, he got quite popular. And let me switch off the sound because it's too imposing. And now, because of the high popularity and this new style, and he became a South Korean national symbol of the same level as Samsung. It's quite an unexpected financial and emotional aspect of the digital distribution. That's how the income and revenue grows. And definitely there are many similar things in Russia and the world which have been enjoying a different degree of success, and we should be wise to invest into it. I will touch down upon it. Let me give you a few other success stories. We have Cutlet TV channel from Poland, and so spouses from Poland were working in the culinary business, and they decided to launch a blog, and so they just retired. They quit from their jobs, and they just started to cheer the channel, and they are getting good money. And at the bottom you see two citizens from St. Petersburg, and they are running a blog on sports. They are Boris Mirochnik and Mikhail Kruglov. It's on fitness and bodybuilding, and they have 3 million clicks per month, and they earn $10,000 per month, and their intention, their ambition is to earn more because it's quite popular in the social networks. And so they quit regular jobs, and they just enjoy their success at YouTube. These are some of our traditional partners. Take Mosfilm, for example. They were hesitant on whether to upload their content on YouTube or not, and they've struck a partnership with us, and they have uploaded their golden collection, and 60% of the audience of Mosfilm is beyond beyond Russia. So Mosfilm films are being exported, we can say, put it like that. And Basilevsk company, it is left bottom corner of the slide, was highly criticized for piracy by the internet community, and their development paradigm is being changed. They have a partnership agreement with us on 2 weeks before launching a Yolki film, and they realize that they can protect successfully their film, and so there are possibilities for that, and they earn good money. And here is that success story on Luntik, that is Moon Tile. It's a character concocted from the word moon and the suffix which signifies a person. And so this particular channel, in March, the number of clicks exceeded 1 billion, and deputy director of the STV TV channel, who is a holder of the IPR, informed that the monetization brings along more money than the DVDs, and $100,000 of US dollars is the money earned by this particular cartoon. So Russia Today is the most popular news channel in the world, and at present they earn $1 million per year, and for the past 2 years they have earned 1.7 million, and this is not the primary source of earnings, but they upload the content as well. YouTube is a professional content as well. Let me quickly leaf through these slides. State channels are on YouTube as well. One of the official channel of the Russian Orthodox Church, and there are a number of clicks as well. They're quite popular. We have started open online translations broadcasts. It is quite expensive, but YouTube has well-distributed servers, and the transmissions are made by the Ice Hockey League, and the schedule of costs are available. Another channel, Content ID, I will talk about it a little later, and I would like to say a few things about the new trends. What are these? New channels switch over to the opportunities that are provided by the YouTube, and they just give up their own streaming. So streaming is quite an expensive thing. And one of the Russian channels paid $7 million. That were the capex for launching their own online channel, and many channels like ORT or Channel 1 gave up streaming, and they use YouTube. That's one trend, number one. Trend number two is consumer copies that contribute to the development of business. What it is, you understand that 1 billion of clicks on Luntik or Russia Today cannot be achieved at one channel only. This is done by using the channels of the other users. It is the fans that offer subscriptions, and these are known as content aggregators. And because YouTube is cooperating with Content ID, and IPR holders can monetize the consumer copies. They can administer the content in different ways. They can instruct us to block all the illegal copies, but the number of the channels is growing, and what's good is that a greater number of the Russian contents monetize it. They just leave the content where it is uploaded, and they get money. It's a new trend. And the digital distribution platform makes a contribution into the activity of the national agents of copyright, quite unexpectedly, but at the same time it's a unique phenomenon for the traditional, for the conventional industry that could not have produced such an outcome on its own. And now I would like to talk about the protection of the copyright. We won't be able to attain such a big list of the partners, and we wouldn't be able to generate revenue if we failed to protect IPR. And the screen shows what kind of measures are taken by us to protect the intellectual property products. Everything we do is based on the US law, and in Russia we are the best friends of the IPR holders, and in the eyes of the IPR holders it is a successful practice of self-regulation, because the Russian law, as was mentioned by one of the previous speakers, at present does not force the internet platform in Russia to remove the content. If anything is done at all, it is done at individual requests. But we do it, and because that's one of the requirements of the accreditations of our channel, and this is the most viable and reasonable compromise, because there will be attempts to shift the balance. Internet platforms will be trying to make it more liberal, but the holders will try to make it stricter. But at the moment, that's how it works, and I try to demonstrate it with the figures I've thrown at you, and it is good for the IPR holders. At the same time, we undertake certain efforts at search. DMCA ensures the balance of interests of the platforms and holders, and what's good about it, they do not avoid challenges, and they oppose and counteract the abuse through the provision of counter notification that is included into the DMCA. Why we cannot achieve that in Russia? This is the most painful issue we all face, and that's what we have to do. That's what we are capable of doing. And one of the articles of the Civil Code has got an adopted version of DMCA for Russia, with the only exception of counter notification. Everything was ready, but the adoption of Chapter 4 is being delayed. And that prevents the holders to earn at the other channels what they're doing at the YouTube. However, there are a number of the initiatives which are high on the agenda in the Ministry of Justice, which have some provisions which are quite hazardous, which might be detrimental for the platforms of innovation distribution of the content. And I intended to say that there are platforms that are similar to YouTube in Russia, but this platform, and I've been repeatedly talking about that, the competing platforms, the competitors, should be well, the list should be reviewed and updated, because some of them are insolvent or bankrupt, and null.ru is okay, but the reason could be because it's an asset of Gazprom Media, and there are heavy investments made into it. But there is another one, Lionel, and I have been advertising it in such a way. It collects the content in a specific way, and it enables the users to upload their books over there. And if the rights holder turns to them and requesting to delete the copies that they own, this is done. But the uploading of the user copies is the only method of getting a bestseller for the library, or to replenish the stock, because the right holders are not eager to present their books, being afraid that there will be abuse. And what is now offered within the copyright cannot improve the situation. And I would like to touch upon the blocking of internet resources through IP addresses. If the law is taken by the Ministry of Culture, then the violations of the copyright will then blacklist the domains, the IP addresses, and then the enforcement is controversial. But it should be borne in mind that the IP blocking affects a great number of internet resources that use the same IP address, and so there is no technology that can block only one resource which is on the same IP address. And given the volume of revenue that is generated by YouTube, and given the scope and growth of the internet advertising market, the state should think over what kind of measures they plan to adopt, like blocking by IP address. And at the same time, we see that the state, without adopting the law which would delineate the responsibilities and set up the battery limits, it's not only about YouTube, everything is fine with YouTube, but it's about the other internet platforms. The state takes measures that does not make the holders use the internet distribution, like don't.
And that is typical for the cinema industry. And recently there was an information that the quota of Russian movies that will be shown on television will be increased to 20%. It seems to me that in market terms, this is at least controversial, or rather stating that thanks to that, Russian cinema will earn more and will get another impetus may seem doubtful in market terms. The last thing I want to say is that we see a good tendency in the draft state strategy on intellectual property. I don't know how it will dominate in the legislation and how it will be dependent on different other projects set up by Telecom and set up by other agencies, but at least the strategy makes an emphasis on the fact that the information consumption economy should have a priority in the development of regulation. I believe that is a very good emphasis, and at least that will allow some platforms to earn money and to survive. And it believes me that in the context of our conversation on investment, this is exactly the sphere that demands further support and needs your investment. Thank you. Thank you very much, Marina. And now we've added to our stock of legal knowledge, and while the room is preparing for the questions, my questions, well, did Charlie bite off his brother's finger? Well, it has two parts to it. No, not to the end. And there's a hot issue. A decision was made on the 6th of May that YouTube has lost its dispute with Rospotrebnadzor concerning its movie advising the rabbit how to slice his veins. Well, we went to the court after having blocked that material, and the law on the blacklists provides that right to us. And when the law on blacklists was passed, there were no clear-cut criteria in that law, and that left to abuse of power. So the absence of definition of what is suicidal content would lead to abuse of power by different government agencies and authorities, and we decided to dispute the decision, although we thought that this content might not be seen as wholesome, but it's not our business and not our right to discuss what is wholesome and what is unwholesome. But the law says that there must be no propaganda of suicide, and I believe that this movie is not about suicide at all, and it's purely an entertainment nature. Thank you. Your question. And introduce yourself, please. Микрофон, пожалуйста. Thank you. Well, the question, I did not hear you to the end. When you spoke about the blacklists on the web, you said that there is application of that to the author's content, and I believe that this idea is very good. Do you believe it's not very good idea because of the technical means of blocking through IP, or the very idea of blocking content is wrong in your opinion? And what do you think about an alternative idea that is very actively being discussed, that is creating a list of the allowed content, which we will look into before we place any content of the web? Thank you. Well, as for the blacklist, the author's content is complex content. It has a potential for dispute. It's inherent in it. And therefore, in our opinion, it does not fall under the blacklists a priori. As of now, the only law in the world suggests sanctions for placing content by different ways of blocking, IP blocking or domain blocking. I know that Roskomnadzor is looking for alternative methods. Recently they brought up a new idea, but the pinpoint blocking methods that they suggested that would not automatically reveal the correspondence. You understand that better as the communication operator. They are looking for those means, but they haven't found them yet. IP blocking will be used if the content violating the author's rights is treated equally with other dangerous content. Well, the language of the law is quite ambiguous in what relates to violation of IP rights, and now the law does not regulate the relationships in the area of intellectual property, and in the absence of a safe harbor in the civil code, that provision will be difficult to enforce. And I believe that there must be a special law on internet providers. I would call it a Russian DMCA, because I'm really scared when I hear about a law on the web. If we're only talking about intellectual property, I believe it's quite realistic to make a draft federal law that would regulate the notification procedure and the blocking. But since we are still in a deadlock, we don't expect that will happen very soon. As for your second question, this is the only area where the government is making progress. And from what I know, this is presented as an alternative to the absence of law, a registry of authors' rights. Well, I believe a registry is a good idea. We could systematize all the knowledge about the author's rule so that we know who has what rights. But I can't see the connection between the registry and the technological intermediary, because we cannot see the registry. We must not undertake the play the role of the judge and decide whether you send us a notification, we block the content. And we cannot decide whether you had the right to send that notification. That's a separate issue. That is described in the American legislation. You claim to have such rights based on the registry or not based on the registry. You send us a notification, we remove the content. But I do not know who will remove the illegal content apart from YouTube. I don't know how you will be working with other platforms, because the only option that remains now is to go to court like it was long ago. The registry doesn't change anything. I believe it's a kind of a sublimation of legislative activity. So, and I'm addressing the rights owners. The earlier we start working out a compromise option, which is, in my opinion, very well described in TWEN 53.3. The better for all of us. Thank you very much. Another question from the audience. Thank you. Alexei Ivanov, Skolkovo. I actually have two questions to you. One is the new forms of monetization. You mentioned that the number of users is growing, so the right owners are interested in the growth of the aggregated number of users, so they get the money just by circulating their content. My question is related to that. We know that there's a lot of fakes and robotized users on the web. So you can, if you want, you can get 1 billion watchers if you want, and there is no methodology to assess whether the user is a fake one or the real one. So how do you see a serious transaction from monetization based on IP to that new model, while you as the platform cannot provide a correct form of reflecting the real demand on the web? I'm not talking about things like that song by Mr. PCI or whatever he's called. It's quite clear that he did not pay for watching it, but for big channels, for public channels, that is a very probable story. So my first question is rather long, but the second question is rather short, but more civilizational, if I may say so. The dynamics of the internet growth, although it exists, but we know there's 7 billion persons living on this earth. 1 billion is just 1/7. As soon as Asia and Africa are connected, there will be a huge growth. So these legal decisions, legal solutions that exist in the area of the web, do you think they are applicable to that new wave? Because we understand that if the number of users grows by a factor of 6 or 7, that will be a new reality. I will start with your second question. The Content ID system that allows the rights owners to manage the content, we invested $35 million into that, and we will further invest as the number of users grow. Of course, that increases the load on the servers, that increases the burden on us when you have to manually manage things, but we will do that. Secondly, your first question, as for the bots, well, I never met this issue with our YouTube team. That's an interesting question, and I will promise you to think over it, but I don't quite understand how detrimental it could be to the monetization. You know how monetization happens at YouTube. This is money from advertisement. The advertiser sees the popularity of the channel. Well, it's quite clear that the information intermediary does not participate in that. We don't know who is real and who is not. I've never come across this problem. Well, maybe you have an example. Well, it's a fake issue. Well, you know, with traditional media, you know that paper issues 1 million copies and sells 20,000. But you understand that the advertisement, cost of advertisement, price of advertisement depends on the number of issues. And if So I might be interested in loading artificial users onto my resource. When you're talking about popular channels, I don't know how much you will spend to get the number of fakes to get twice as much. Well, that's a difficult question. I spent 12,000 rubles to buy 400,000. Did you try to advertise for Skolkovo? No, that was my personal story. And I read stories on the internet on the famous Angel Agency. Yes, I got that. Unfortunately, I cannot comment on that. And with your kind permission, I will find an answer for you if that problem does exist, and I will share my opinion. But it's the first time I come across this. But we've never, well, those fakes. really remind me of bringing people to the demonstration in favor of Putin. And I understand that those fakes are a sad reality, and so we need to deal with this. And now I'm very glad to all of the audience for not leaving the room, and people keep coming even at 5 o'clock. And I hope that we will have use the other 30 minutes to listen to our colleagues.
Then it's your floor.
Sorry, we have technical difficulties with the equipment.
Inviting me here and making it possible. Your firm supporting my coming and speaking today. Delighted to be here. By a show of hands in the audience, how many people went to see some paintings in the Hermitage? Anybody go see the galleries? Nobody went. Okay. Not this time. Well, I happened to go, and while going on this tour, I was behind a group of 3 men, and they were standing in front of this beautiful mural. And the mural was a depiction of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and just before the fall. And the 3 men started to comment on it, and there was an Englishman, a Frenchman, and a Russian. All right, so the Englishman started out first by saying, well, of course, these are Brits because, well, look at the resolve in their eye. Look at the steely gleam that you see on their resolve on this very precipice, the very edge of the most tumultuous event in the history of humankind. Yes, clearly, quite British. And the Frenchman says, no, 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 they are not British, they are French. They are naked, they are beautiful, and they are proud. Clearly, they are French. And the Russian looks at the 2 men and says, yet, notice they have no shelter. Notice they have no clothing. Notice they have but 1 apple to share between them. And yet, they are told, this is paradise? Clearly, they are Russian. So I tell that story, a little bit of a joke, to say that there are differences across cultures. And companies like Google and eBay are going into different cultures, and we have to be sensitive to what those different cultural mindsets are. And with that, I labeled my presentation Investment, E-commerce, and Smart Policy Making. And really what I want to talk about are 4 key things that I think will help facilitate e-commerce. And then lastly, if I have time, talk a little bit about smart policy making versus pure regulating by fiat. So firstly, facilitating an investment culture. Now, we heard a lot from our venture capitalists earlier today about what it would take to, improve the investment climate or to improve the chances of venture capital succeeding in Russia. And from my perspective, and probably from Google's as well, platforms like ours and companies like ours depend on technology. And the technology is constantly evolving and changing. And we depend on companies, small startups, new companies, developing that technology. And therefore, we need companies like the venture capitalists and or others to invest in those companies. And what would make it easier from our perspective, or at least from the entrepreneurs that we encounter, is 1, reducing the amount of red tape that these entrepreneurs are forced to encounter as they roll out their businesses, right? They want to focus on running the business. They don't want to be focused on tax requirements. They don't want to be focused on legal requirements. And of course, they don't want to be running into sort of the corruption and bribery issues. So what else? We heard that there is money in Russia to invest. That's true. But we also heard that it comes at a very high cost of capital. So how do we encourage foreign investment in companies like Google or like eBay? Well, one of those things is to reduce the amount of exposure or potential exposure for, let's call untoward behavior from regulators. That's not to say that my company or Google has experienced this, but it's certainly a concern, and it's something that I think tends to restrict or slow down certain companies from investing. And then finally, maybe lastly but not least, attracting and retaining talented youth. I mean, Russia has a great body of very talented and educated people, although some of them are leaving. So we'll talk a little bit about the, and this is off of the slide unfortunately here, and I know this may be a little bit controversial, but the possibility of a sponsorship or co-sponsorship of education abroad for youth who want to, and then have some sort of hooks into them so that after they're done with their education, they come back to Russia and you know, deliver value to the country as a whole. All right, so this one is probably, if you're going to take one thing away from my presentation, this would be it. We need to ensure predictability in shipping and customs. If we're going to have e-commerce work in this country, we absolutely have to get this one right. And the top graphic you'll see there is kind of interesting because it really what it is a group of scientists got together and by GPS tracking, tracked all the shipping routes of the major cargo carriers. So you can see in the upper right-hand corner of that, half of a cargo ship. But so all of those lines that you see, and it's kind of a blur even between some of the countries because of so many shipping lanes, but that's just an idea to say that shipping is very important. And delays, the first point there, delays related to customs need to be addressed. Now I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but this is something that needs to be solved, and some ideas that may be thought about include additional staffing, KPIs that are focused not just on enforcement, but on speed of processing, and I think an allowance for focusing on smaller shipments as well as the big shipments. I mean, obviously oil and natural resources are important to be reviewed by customs, but the smaller shipment needs to be looked at too, otherwise we just get these massive delays. Next, delivery systems. Absolutely have to do something here, and maybe it's getting creative between the relationship between the national post systems and the private couriers. I understand that there's at least one courier that's doing some subcontracting for National Post, but more relationships like that, or more relationships like taking a private courier into the National Post system without having to take it into Russia first. You could think about Brazil's example. Brazil is doing something rather novel where they are looking at doing a customs clearance process in the States, in Miami, as it turns out. So things like this, where we could speed up this process, is going to be essential because you know, we're getting more and more into a mode of instant gratification. You know, we even have a service now called eBay Now, where in certain cities, you order something on eBay and it's delivered within 1 hour. Okay? And so if you have to wait week on week on week, it's just, it really sort of slows down the enthusiasm that one has to make a transaction. And you can't see it on the slide because it dropped off the bottom, but transparency about cost in customs too, because really when you're ordering something online, you want to know not only what the price of that item is, you want to know what the shipping costs are, and you want to know what the customs exposure is. So we have fairly high customs personal exemption here in Russia, which is great, but if you're going above that €1,000 limit, it'd be great to know what that amount of customs you're exposed to. So we've developed a program called Global Shipping Platform, or GSP, which we're rolling out across several countries, should be here to Russia in August, I believe, but it will tell you fully landed costs for that good, including customs, takes care of all the custom forms, don't have to hassle with it, very easy. All right, thirdly, this one, you can't quite see it at the bottom, but the main takeaway I want you to get from this slide is don't overregulate. Now, there are certain countries out there that are extremely focused on regulation, particularly on the consumer protection side, and I think it almost becomes counterproductive for the consumer because the country has legislated to such a great degree that the smaller court systems and that get clogged up with these cases of people trying to demand their rights through the legislation that was provided, whereas had they allowed the company, like my company eBay, to provide a solution like we have, when this one shows buyer protection, eBay buyer protection, if you buy something on our site and either, you know, Oksana orders a purple dress and it turns out it's red, or she doesn't get it at all, in this case, you can use the eBay buyer protection to get both the cost of the item plus the shipping cost reimbursed to you. So it's a good tool. So here I'm just saying, give the industry a chance to provide a solution and don't overregulate. Okay, so fostering growth of electronic commerce. This slide at the graphic at the top shows, and it might be a bit difficult to read, but the number of, the percentage of internet penetration by country by percentage of population. Now this is a little bit dated, it's end of 2010 data, but you'll see on the right-hand side, Russia, Brazil, and China, who are three of the BRIC countries that people are always talking about, right? So you see the pretty low penetration there, which gives opportunity, of course. And from my perspective, and it was talked about a little bit earlier today, what would help platform providers like my company is actually allowing for platform immunity. And by that, I mean, if we have a system set up where, and we do some front-end stuff too, but at least have the ability, if somebody sees a rights owner, be it a copyright holder, patent holder, trademark owner, if they see some material on our site, you know, we have linkage that says, okay, right, you know, that they can complain, okay? They complain, it goes into our viewer system, which is verified rights owner, and we pull those down. And this notice and takedown procedure works really well, and it usually is done within a matter of a couple of hours, if that. So it's pretty responsive. And for that, the platform that we operate, which brings buyers and sellers together, that's the end of our liability. And that's just to add to what was said by the earlier presenters, we do some upfront screening. You know, when people are loading up images, we do some screening to make sure that they aren't infringing copyrights. So we do try to police that to some extent. But of course, there are times that we miss things, and we have to have a procedure for people to enforce the rights. So think about that. Privacy and data protection, all I want to say here is, and I know there have been some recent changes to your data protection law here, of which I'm not 100% familiar, but I will say that trying to harmonize across systems. I mean, if you look at what the EU does, what's done in America, it would be great if we could somehow have a little bit more of a harmonized system so we don't have to have so many one-off things done to provide for data protection and privacy. Finally, and this is probably a little bit hard to read, but there's a cartoon where it says, I'm still not sure how it happened. One minute we were bouncing ideas off each other, and the next thing I knew, we were using furniture instead. So with that, I want to bounce a couple of ideas off you, not any furniture, but as the policymakers here are thinking about ways to solve problems, I mean, I would encourage them to use experts from public and private sectors, those from the industry, even software, look at the markets, realizing that each of these has its own strengths and weaknesses. Secondly, realizing this is a complex field. The technology is complex, the solutions are complex. It is not, it's not easy to get your mind around some of these things. So realizing that it's a complex field, that policy making about it may need to be a bit complex or at least responsive, and that there may be a need to proceed on a trial and error basis. So you may try something for a year, find out if it works or it doesn't work, change it, keep it. And then finally, providing tools that really help to evolve solutions as opposed to determining them by fiat. You know, taking feedback from the industry. Is this working well? Getting feedback from the public. Is this going okay? And then being willing to be responsive. So in general, I think I've shared 4 things that will help to foster the electronic commerce growth in this country, and some ideas about smart policy making versus additional regulation. And I'll turn it over to the crowd if there might be any questions for me.
Thank you, Dan. That was very short. Thanks for that, and very informative. We have immediate questions from the audience. Да, можно представьтесь, пожалуйста.
Жанна Журавлева, Business, Peterburg. Sorry, give Dan the time. About 1 year ago, we wrote that your service will be fully operational in Russia, and we shall be able to pay for eBay goods to get refunds. and we shall be able not only to buy from eBay but also to sell on eBay. That will offer additional opportunities for our businessmen. Well, recently eBay progressed quite a lot, and now we have TV ads promoting eBay. Can you comment on that? Are you fully operational in Russia? If I remember correctly, there were some regulatory problems. There were some regulatory limitations. Did you manage to overcome these?
Thank you for that question. I think the answer is that, yes, there has been some recent advertisements, some even on TV. You may have seen a commercial. The initial focus of the company right now is for buyers. So if you right now go to ebay.com, you will see what we call the Global Buying Hub experience, which is not fully localized, but you'll see Russian language, items described in Russian. You have the ability to toggle between English and Russian. You'll see things that have currency estimation in rubles. You'll see things that have timing of auctions in local Moscow time. Customer service responses will be in Russian. So we're getting, a lot of the help pages are in Russian. We're getting more and more toward having it fully localized, but of course we're not there yet. To your other question on sales, technically you could affect the sales, and some people do, from Russia through eBay, but the initial push that we're going right now is focused on buyers. I think there will come a time in the future when we're more focused on enabling merchants to affect sales. Is it possible for a consumer to do a sale through the site? Yes, but it's not something that we're really pushing hard. I hope that answers the question. If not, you can ask again.
Российские компании могут ли они сейчас официально?
Say officially, Russian commercial companies can they officially sell on eBay, or do they have, let's say, to use bypasses via Ukraine or some other countries?
Legislation as well. I would suggest help from a friend, and we would have someone in the audience just to comment on that, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
А можно на микрофончик?
Наталья Гуляева, партнер, руководитель.
Natalia Guляeva, Media Technologies. We are lucky to act as consultants for eBay, and I'll try to clarify this issue for you. PayPal, it's a service providing financial support or financial services. In our country, financial services are subject to the regulation of the central bank, and a license is needed. You asked what were the problems with the operationability of the eBay. It was due to the fact that we were forced to get this license. As soon as all licenses are in our hands, the service will be fully operational, and you will see the real progress.
We do think there's good news on the horizon there too.
Еще вопрос, пожалуйста, из зала. Представьтесь.
Павел Нетубский, журналист.
Yesterday, a representative of the Ministry of Trade was promoting your system because one of the obstacles to the development of internet commerce in Russia is the absence of trust. And according to the representative of this ministry, you are not refunding the goods if they are returned. Is it true?
I think the answer to that question is somewhat dependent on the nature of the return. If, as we talked about earlier with Oksana, if you order something and it is not as described, you know, the purple dress ends up being red, that would be something where eBay buyer protection would step in, and you'd get your money and your shipping, the original cost plus the shipping cost back. If the item doesn't show up, after a certain period of time, you can make a claim, and eBay will pay you, the shipping cost and the cost of the item. What is not currently covered by the eBay buyer protection policy is sort of buyer's remorse. If you buy something and it's exactly as was described and it shows up and you just have a change of heart, I don't like it. That is not currently covered by the eBay buyer protection policy. Now, having said that, the returns that are entered into or agreed to by individual sellers, that's a different option that someone could go down. I'm just speaking primarily right now about eBay buyer protection. What we as a company will do, not necessarily what the seller would do. The first avenue is to reach out to the seller, and if you have no success with the seller, then you come back to eBay, and that's where we try to make you whole.
Ну вот мы уже плавно передвинулись от темы венчурного капитализма и интернета непосредственно к...
We have gradually moved from venture capitalism and e-commerce to eBay sellers and buyers. I would like to sum up our discussion. I think that all the topics that we have discussed today are really important. The venture capitalism is suffering from proper regulation. And the internet is also missing a legal framework. It's missing a sufficient and appropriate legal framework that to some extent may hinder the further development of e-commerce, but I still the commitment to improve the situation, and I do believe that at the following international forum we will not discuss the future, but we will discuss the already existing legal initiatives and new laws. I would like to express my gratitude to the participants of our discussions and to our audience. We decided to wind up our session a bit earlier. If you have any questions, we will still be here, and you can ask them face to face. And thank you very much for your attention.